Was Vick out of line?
Listen, Michael Vick's my guy, but this is the most preposterous thing I've ever heard Vick say. The fact that he thinks that Colin Kaepernick needs to cut his hair in order for him to get an opportunity to be signed in the National Football League. You know, I think Vick feels like he's indebted to the National Football League for the opportunity that he got. It's kind of like a familiar role with him. Okay. He comes out of Leavenworth prison, you know, behind the whole dogfighting situation. And what does he need to do? He needs to have people on his team. He needs to clean his image up. Right. So we know Vick had the cornrows when he played for the Atlanta Falcons. He cleans up his image. Mm-hmm. He gets Tony Dungy to be his mentor, to vouch for him. Andy Reid gives him an opportunity. So to him, it's a familiar playbook that he sees that Colin Kaepernick needs to follow in order to get another opportunity. But here's the difference. Colin Kaepernick was just exercising his First Amendment right. Michael Vick committed a felony in dogfighting. So the fact that he's trying to make this situation seem apples to apples, to me, is just preposterous.
Well, first of all, he's way out of line in these comments. And I say he's out of line because I go back to when Michael Vick was first drafted to the National Football League. Dominique, I gravitated to Michael Vick because you know why? He looked like me. He was from my kind of generation, that urban African-American quarterback that didn't look like Warren Moon. He didn't look like Randall Cunningham. He didn't look like Doug Williams. This was a guy who played the game like me, with swagger, with finesse. And so he had to be accepted by the National Football League. He had to be accepted by what the league was kind of going to. He set precedent for guys like Cam Newton and Colin Kaepernick. He wore the braids. We haven't seen, tell me the last quarterback you saw with braids in the National Football League. He's the one that started it. And to say Colin Kaepernick needs to cut his hair, I'm not trying to be political. You are being political. Because when you came in, you didn't have braids, but you got braids when you got in because you got comfortable. So I think he's way out of line in these comments. And I think Vick wanted to be accepted. He wanted to be accepted by the league, and we accepted him. So for him to switch his words now to where he's at, this is, to me, it's just he's out of line for this.
I think the point that Damian made earlier about like the false equivalence that's coming with talking about Vick as if he's like Kaepernick. Like, we need to understand that Kaepernick and Vick are not the same person. The crime that Vick committed was an actual crime. The thing that people have said about Kaepernick for doing is speaking up against the injustice. So the idea that he needs to clean up his image is nonsense. His image is pristine as far as I'm concerned. But the concept that Vick's talking about in like the need to cut your hair or that the perception does change you, that's a real thing. I remember when I was headed into the draft, it was a real thing that everyone was talking about. All the agents were telling their players who had long hair to cover up their tattoos and cut their hair. That perception is a real thing. If you have long hair, if you have braids, if you have an afro, there are assumptions that the people in the league are going to make about you. I agree with you guys both that it's an unfair assumption to make, but Vick is right. I don't think Kaepernick should do it and conform, but I think Vick is right. If he cuts his hair and then comes out and says all these apologetic things and is super deferential in the way that people want him, things might change. I don't agree with Michael saying that Colin's not on the team because he can't play. That's just nonsense to me. He's good enough to be on the roster.
So you think him cutting his hair is going to all of a sudden give him an opportunity? All of a sudden the team's going to race to give him an opportunity? You don't understand the hatred that a lot of these people have towards Colin Kaepernick because of this whole flag situation. It's deeper than a haircut. It's deeper than the haircut. Let's not make this thing like, oh, well, I go out in here, get an even Steven that, oh, everything's going to be good.
Please don't mischaracterize what I'm saying.
That's
not at all what I said. I'm saying that perception matters, and the length of your hair, as much as we want to believe that we're at a point in America where people can look past your appearance, that still matters. Your appearance matters. He cuts his hair, he's not going to be on the roster. If he goes through all these other things where he cuts his hair, then he comes out and apologizes and does all the tour that we all want to see, the super contrite tour, then things might change. But he's not on the bench or he's not off of a roster because he can't play. And I know I'm not naive enough to think that you can just cut your hair and all of a sudden you're on the team. I just know that it matters to the owners and it matters to the fans and it matters to the coaches, frankly.
Yeah, Dominique, but you brought up about when guys are at the combine, guys who we know that have had checker pass in college. And we walked around the combine, yourself, Damien, you know how it was. You saw the guy who had to wear a suit. You saw a guy that had to cover up the tattoos because you were trying to get into the National Football League. Colin Kaepernick is already there. He's already been selected. He's already played. He's actually started in a Super Bowl. So the thing is, we know the reason why Colin Kaepernick, to me, is not in the National Football League. It's a lot that has to do with his stance. It's a lot of what he did as far as sitting for the national anthem, but a lot to do with his play as well. So it's so many different factors going into this. And to me, if he does cut his hair, if Colin Kaepernick cuts his hair right now after what's being said, he will be considered a sellout. You cut your hair now, Colin Kaepernick, you are selling out to what everybody thinks you should do. And for everything that he's been preaching, everything that he's done so far, to me, if he cuts his hair,
he's conforming.
He's conforming, but nothing is now valid.
There's almost nothing Colin Kaepernick can do at this point to be considered a sellout. He can cut his hair, he can do whatever he wants. Colin Kaepernick and sellout should never be in the same sentence.
If he cuts his hair right now after what's being said, that to me is selling out to what he's been doing. Am I correct? I mean, think about it.
No, he has worn
his hair a certain way over the last, 6 months to a year? And now someone says he needs to cut his hair to get back into the league. So
but I don't
for
understand
him to
how
cut
you can
his
take
hair,
both
he's
positions.
conforming to what people think he should look like as an NFL quarterback.
I don't see how you can take both positions and saying that cutting his hair won't matter and also cutting his hair makes him a sellout. I don't understand how it can say that it won't matter to the perception of him, but then it also makes him a sellout. I could care, like, this is kind of absurd that we spent this much time talking about his hair. I think we all agree that he shouldn't cut his hair unless he wants to cut his hair.
Absolutely.
And that the reason why he's not on the field is because he took a stance, not because he's not a good enough player to be on somebody's team. You guys disagree with any of that?
No, I don't disagree with it, but I can, the one thing I will say is you can't be for the culture and then you talk about, I'm going to cut my hair, change up my image.
The culture is more than an afro. Like, I feel like I do several things for the culture, and I'm never going to grow an afro because I don't feel like dealing with it.